And now for some thoughts on the power of selflessness, please welcome Richard Louie, anchor and journalist, MSNBC, NBC News.
Hello, and it's good to be here at the 5th International Vatican Conference. Thank you, Dr. Robin Smith, and all the organizers for putting this together and for inviting me to discuss a topic that is very important to me as of late. It is one that I personally have had to try to figure out as I've lived through caregiving of my father. About 8 years ago, he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and then began the decision for me here in New York to whether or not to travel to California to help care for him as Alzheimer's took that long journey of taking him away from us. And I decided to ask my supervisor if I could work less, then began a part-time profession as a news anchor here at 30 Rockefeller Plaza in New York City. I worked from 8 days a week, as we like to say in the business, down to 3 days on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And this is so that I could go to California and take the 10-hour trip 2 or 3 times a month. And that began sort of a long exploration of why I was making such a decision. And I'm certainly far from being perfect in the idea of selflessness, as many will attest. But I began to think about it. And that's what led me to today and a book called Enough About Me. As a journalist, I like to explore what I don't understand so well. But what I did understand, unfortunately, well, was selfishness. And I believe that what we're living through today is a selfish pandemic. And what tells me we're living through a selfish pandemic has been the stories I've had to cover, whether it's racial strife. There are the numerous mass killings that I've stayed up all night in this very building at 30 Rockefeller Plaza of killers taking lives, the epitome of being selfish, thinking that because of my view, I have the right to take other people's lives. All of that together, along with the viral pandemic, where there are individuals who we saw very readily not wearing masks around people that were very susceptible to this horrible pandemic, like my parents. Now, these are all things we know, but the idea that we're living in a selfish pandemic and my journey caring for my father brought me into this idea. I needed to explore this idea of selflessness. And one of the amazing things is that this is very accessible in bite-sized ways, and that it's not the gargantuan idea of being Mother Teresa or Desmond Tutu, and that we can be selfless by looking at the decisions we make every 15 minutes. In the process of digging into selflessness, found that scientists more or less agree that we make a conscious choice about every 15 minutes. And that when we go buy a lunch then, or we reach out to somebody for a call, what might we do for that other person that might be selfless? Do we buy them a lunch? Do we buy somebody else a lunch? Do we donate a lunch? Do we call people that we don't agree with because we want to figure out maybe there is a happy middle ground? And so with that very accessible way, and the way we can build muscle tone by doing something daily like that, it reinforces us to be able to do the big things when they do come about. And on that note, there's also some very unintended benefits that we found in our research for under selflessness. You can live longer. It was proven up to 4 years, according to a study that looked at 55 plus who were doing volunteer work. Those who were doing it for a selfless notion lived 4 years longer than the average. Those who did that work for a selfish reason lived 2 years less. The research shows we can live longer, we can look better, we can be happier. And when we look at the time of 2021, we do need to, in this collective moment globally, understand how we can help each other in a different way. And so it shows that the unintended benefits of selflessness can actually give us these typical self-help kind of benefits along the way. And I know that, though, we live in a selfish pandemic, as I am positing here, that I often see the amazing selfless heroes out there that counterbalance that single selfish person that might be out there doing something horrific. I mentioned the killings, the mass killings, and Tiffany Parada is one example that who turns around her car in the street when she's in El Paso, Texas, to drive towards the shooter that just shot at her and her family, to overtake that car so that she can roll down her window and warn other people that there is a shooter that's behind them. Driving at 120 miles an hour, she was, and she had her 4 young children in the back seat. Her whole world was in that car. But she and her husband decided they would risk it all to warn others in a selfless way. And there were always the Tiffany Paradas around these selfish epitomes of badness. There are always 10 or 20 others that are doing far more heroic things in a selfless way. And it's real. And so thanks for spending some time with me to consider this need of combating selfishness and what we've seen today. And as a journalist, what I've seen in my reporting. I think with all the great minds here today who bring so many different specialties and thinkings and abilities, that we can combat big things like this. And it is potentially way above my pay grade, but not above yours. So thank you for being here and gathering at the Fifth International Vatican Conference. And I'm hoping that some great solutions to big ideas and big problems like this will arise. And I'm very confident that will. So thank you again and enjoy the rest of the program.